Hi everyone. Welcome to Facebook Live with Bonnie B. Or I guess welcome to Life Happens. For those of you who don't know me, I started these Facebook Live moments back in April when COVID first started and our lives were all drastically changed by the COVID virus. I was able to relate to everything that was happening with the social distancing and self-isolation because of my son who was diagnosed with needing a bone marrow transplant in 2014. So I started doing these Facebook Live moments, hi John, to kind of pass on some of the things that I've learned in the process of all of that. When I started this, I didn't really have a end date in mind. I just started praying every week about what to say and hoping that I would know the right time to stop. And my only plan was really to do my best to help people. And as long as I felt like I was helping someone, I would keep going. So I should probably apologize for my appearance. Hi, Heather. I just got off work and I'm actually in my office because I just got off duty and I'm going to be heading home soon as I'm done with this. But as most of you know, I'm a law enforcement officer, but I also work in communications here in Collier County. And last Wednesday, when I got to work, I got to work early and I was preparing for my shift and I was getting everything ready. And as I walked across the room, I could hear someone giving instructions for CPR. I could hear them doing the count for the compressions. And of course, this isn't anything new, but for some reason at this very moment, everything kind of stopped and her voice was like all I heard, kind of like in a movie when everything else slows down and all you hear is this one sound. That was kind of what I felt in that moment. And as I looked around, I was marveling at how for that second, in my mind, this environment of performing CPR was a normal practice and everybody else in the room is just still doing their work as one of our operators is doing CPR. And I thought about how on the other end of that line, the caller's world had stopped and probably everyone around the caller within earshot or visual distance is watching or hearing CPR happen and is completely engrossed in what's happening. And that caller's life would probably be changed forever by that moment and what happened and what they experienced. But the operator who's taking the call most likely doesn't even get a chance to think about it because as soon as that call disconnects, another call pops into their ear of another caller needing something else. So as I'm processing this whole picture, really, I mean, I've worked for the agency 20 years, but this is the first time that it became so clear. And my heart went out to the people on the other line whose life was being changed. Not that I don't ever think of the caller, but it just didn't become this, I don't know, it just was different in that moment. And my heart really went out to the people's life that was being changed by that call, at the other end of that call. And I was reminded that the way we see the world from where we sit is a lot different than the way that the caller sees the world on the other end of the line. And so on Wednesday, I had no idea that I would be thinking about perspective as much when all this happened and things were brought into perspective. I had no idea that perspective would be such a huge part of my week. So on Tuesday, I received a text from a friend of mine who had gone to a briefing and was told that COVID-19 was mirroring the Spanish flu, and it's predicted that we would be dealing with this for at least another year. So I began to really process the numbers. I'm a numbers girl. I like to put things in perspective by numbers. So I started researching the Spanish flu and started really trying to put all the COVID stuff into some sort of perspective via numbers. And for me, that's kind of helps me to process things better when I have like numbers for some reason. So I feel like when I'm able to put things into perspective, not only for me, but for other people, yes. Congratulations, John. John just sent a text that he had 6 life-saving wards during his time with CCSO, which is awesome. But but our situation that we're in is greatly impacted by our perception. And our perception of that situation can change with just a little bit of information or just a little bit of different knowledge, or even just taking a second to think of how someone else feels. So on Wednesday and Thursday, I was working on this. I was working on the whole, hi Ashlyn. I was working on COVID and getting information about how, what all that was about. And I was actually really surprised to see in 1918, they had masks on and they did social distancing and all of that. Like, I was kind of, I don't know why I was surprised, but I just kind of felt like that was a surprise. But then I talked to different people about school opening, and and when I was talking to, I'm thinking, for me, I can't wait for my kids to go back to school, just open school already. I'll send my kids to school. I'm okay with that. But then I was talking to somebody else, and she's like, her kids have severe asthma, so she doesn't want to send her kids to school, or she's fearful to send her kids to school. So again, I realized what a difference perspective makes, and how what's good for me may not be good for somebody else, and there's seems to be that there's no right answer in all of it. Like, there's way too many variables, and there's no way to answer the situation with one right answer. So then Thursday night, I came home from work, and I got off work at about 11, and Timmy likes to go for walks with me, so him and I went for a walk through the neighborhood, and he's 16 years old, and as we're on our walk, he starts telling me about an argument that started on, of course he plays video games all the time, so he was online in an online chat in a video game, and an argument started about somebody dying after having a police officer kneel on their neck for 6 minutes. And he didn't really have a question in that statement. He just kind of just told me that was what happened. And so at this point, I don't hardly ever watch the news, so I had not heard anything about George Floyd and his death. So based on what Timmy gave me at that very moment, I explained to him that me as a law enforcement officer, I don't like watching any video and taking any kind of stance on that video, because a lot of the times we're not given all the news, and we're only given a portion of the news, and it's hard to make any kind of clear. I've even had incidences where I've been in an incident with somebody, actually in a physical fight with somebody, and that video of that physical fight was altered and then put out to look as if I had done something wrong. So I don't take a lot of stock with the videos that go out. And but I told Timmy also, in all of that, there's no reason a deputy would ever need to kneel on somebody's neck for 6 minutes. And so in that conversation, Timmy reminds me of something that I had told him back when the whole Black Lives Matter movement came out. I was sitting in church one day, and I was watching, in our church we have a lot of biracial couples, and I'm watching all of them, and I said to my kids, I'm like, maybe God's way of eliminating some of the racial tension is to eliminate to kind of make it where there's not as many races, maybe maybe he's trying to remind us that in reality we only have one race. There's the human race, and so Timmy reminded me that I had made that statement that, maybe God was trying to move towards a more unified front by those relationships. And so after he had, of course, told me about this video, he looks at me and he's like, so how's that thought process working out for you, Mom? But I did not know much about, like I said, at this time, I didn't know anything about the George Floyd death, and only just what my 16-year-old was telling me. So when I went to work on Friday, I asked other couple deputies that were at work, and I asked them if they had heard about this, and they both said that they had heard about it, and that there was not another cop in the country that would agree with what that man did, and there's no reason ever to be on somebody's neck like that. So after I had that conversation, I got a little distracted because I found out that my assignment in my work schedule is changing again, so I didn't do a whole lot else Friday. But when I came into work Saturday, I sat under there's a big screen at our work, and I sat underneath the screen, and Fox News was playing, the whole time at a 12-hour shift. I'm watching Fox News happen, and it's showing riot after riot and issue after issue and all the things that are unfolding. So for 12 hours, the person who never watches the news sat and watched the news. And I left work, and I was so bothered by everything. And all day Sunday, I kept thinking that if one man's actions, and I realized that there was 3 other men there, but one man's actions changed so many people's lives, can't there be something one person could do to stop it? I kind of got stuck in that thought process. A quote that's one of my favorite quotes that sticks in my head and is kind of my driving force for a lot of things I do is that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I just kept, so all day Sunday, and if I get emotional, I'm sorry, this has been a really rough and emotional week, but so all day Sunday, all last night, I couldn't sleep. What was I going to say on this video? There are times where I was thinking maybe doing these Facebook Live things is too big for me, and maybe this issue is way beyond my capacity to voice about. And maybe it's time for me to bow out gracefully and not do this anymore. Maybe nobody would notice, right? But then I watched the videos of people destroying property and people's businesses, and yes, Scott. But I'm watching all this happen, and all I could think of is I can't not do anything. So and all I could think of is this doesn't solve anything. So what those law enforcement officers did was way wrong, without question. They're without question, they were very wrong by what they're doing. But what is this violence solving? So again, I was brought back to this, that the world changes from one perspective to another, that our perspective changes, so in so many ways there's no right answer to this situation either. That in this situation, if law enforcement responds in violence to stop the violence, then we still end up being seen as the problem. So which will only causes the problem to escalate, and it almost feels like our hands are tied. So I watch these videos of the violence and the mayhem, and to me, it doesn't seem like it doesn't really seem like it's about race at all. I'm watching all of this, and I'm seeing all of the races on either part of the situation. I work alongside of black cops. To me, this isn't a race issue, but it's a heart issue. It's a problem with hearts, not problem of color. But and people would argue. Like I watched a sermon, or not even a sermon, but a conversation, on at a church today, and the colored pastor brought up a lot of valid points of things that he's been through. And so I'm not saying that racism isn't an issue, but I think it's more of a heart issue than it is anything else. So anyway, I kept getting back to oppression seems to be the biggest issue that I've heard, that I hear. And when I started working at the sheriff's office, and as my education grew, and as things, when I went to the road, and I learned about domestic violence, and I learned of the dysfunction that I was raised in, and the dysfunction that I was raising my children in, I became determined to kind of figure out why we repeat the cycle. If I was raised in this dysfunctional cycle, then why did I raise my children in this dysfunctional cycle? Like I became kind of obsessed with why the cycle continues. Why do we move from, as people who have been in dysfunctional relationships, why do we tend to move from one dysfunctional relationship to another? People who live in oppression, why do they stay in oppression and repeat the oppression cycle? I became really obsessed with that thought process, and I started to go on to calls, and I started to really talk to people and really start to listen to their heart. And I did a lot of research and just trying to learn more about the way things work with not only it's not a culture thing, it's not just a intelligence thing, it's not just an emotional thing, it's not one thing, right? It's a lot of things, but I think at the end of the day it comes down to a heart issue. So you have to forgive me because I had such a hard time writing my notes, because I had such a hard time knowing where I was going to go with this talk, that hi Lori, that I'm now kind of at the end of my notes, so I'm kind of going to go with my heart here. But so if you've ever read the book, there's a book called The 5 Love Languages, and it's a really good book, and Dr. Gary Troutman wrote it, and he did an excellent job, and I've learned a lot from that book and reading that. But when I read the book, I couldn't relate to, I loved all the love languages. There's 5 love languages. I love them all. I wanted them all. That's what I wanted a part of my life. But what I realized was, so the 5 love languages that he teaches about are words of affirmation, physical touch, receiving gifts, quality time, and acts of service. And what he teaches is that a person, as they're growing up, the love language that is predominant in their life is the love language that they learn, and that's the love language they understand. So if in my family they give lots of words of affirmation, that becomes my love language. But if in your family you receive a lot of gifts, well, then that becomes your love language. So if we're in a relationship and I'm giving and I'm saying words of affirmation to you, you might not receive that as love. But if I give you a gift, for you, that gift means more to you than the words of affirmation. But for me, if words of affirmation is my love language, then giving me a gift is not going to mean as much to me as the words of affirmation. That's just how we understand love. And I get that. Okay. But those 5 love, what I believe is that those 5 love languages are built when you have a love that's built on a foundation of faith and trust. So if you live in a somewhat healthy environment that has a foundation of faith and trust, Though your love language is words of affirmation or physical touch or receiving gifts or quality time or acts of service. That's your love languages, and I get that. But for someone who is raised in an atmosphere with a foundation of dysfunction and fear, their love language is very different. Their love language is words of rejection or unhealthy touch or oppression or abandonment or servitude. Those are the things they understand. They might not understand why they keep going back to those things, but that's their language. That's how they have received love their whole life. So even though to an average person, like I was on calls where I'd be on a domestic violence call, and I would listen to the people, the deputies that I was with, say condescending remarks, of course not in front of the person, but, like off when we're, by ourselves, make these condescending remarks about, why this woman could stay in this relationship, or, why she hasn't left, or blah, blah, blah. And all I could think of is I was that woman, or I was pretty dang close to that woman, or I was, like, I get it. Like, I know why she's there, and I know why she can't leave, and it takes changing your language. Like, you have to learn a whole nother, when you've been raised in a certain atmosphere. Like, even if a person has completely loving family, but they've been raised in an atmosphere of oppression, then that is what they understand. So trying to change that thought process, that thing in their heart, that pattern, takes a process. They have to learn a new love language. They have to change the way they understand the world. It's not like that's why they say, okay, like most people who win the lottery are broke shortly thereafter. It's not because they didn't have money. It's because their heart didn't change. Giving them money doesn't change their heart, right? So, yes, moving from dysfunction to healthy is completely foreign. That's right, Scott. But so like one of the reasons why I started the Mustard Seed Ranch, or I want to start the Mustard Seed Ranch, is to show children that there's another way, to help them learn a new language, to help them to learn and accept a new type of love. If we want to stop oppression, we have to get to the heart of the problem. Yes, it's like a flea trying to jump out of the jar. Yeah, I know that whole, yes, I agree. But if we want to stop oppression, we have to change we have to help to get those people, or get people who are stuck in oppression, to learn a new language, and to help to change their heart to where they're accepting of a different lifestyle. We, in Collier County, we do really great about helping the kids, and giving them, during school, when school's about to start, we give all the backpacks and we give all the supplies, and during Christmas we have, Shop with a Cop, and we go shopping for presents for the kids, and that's all wonderful, and it's amazing, and I'm so grateful that we do these things. But that's 2 days out of 363 days of a year that they live a completely different lifestyle. If it's kind of like the whole thought process, if you give a person a fish, you feed them for the day, but if you teach them how to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. We have to take time to understand that sometimes when you're stuck in a way of life, it's not because you want to be there, or it's not because you even understand that there's anywhere else that you can be. I know that in my patterns that I was stuck in, I kind of didn't You don't know what you don't know. If nobody ever teaches you anything different, if you don't know that you deserve something better, or you don't know that there's anything else out there for you to receive, you get stuck. And I know that's where I was. I was stuck. So I know that it's hard for me when I watch other people judge other people who are stuck, and stuck in an unhealthy atmosphere and unhealthy lifestyle. I get it. I know why they're stuck there, because I was stuck there too. But it takes empathy of understanding, and it takes time to love them and teach them a new way, a healthy love that they don't understand. I just want more than anything for people to see their value. As I was thinking about the violence, and I think for some people, it is the only language they know, and that's the only language they speak, and it's the only way they feel they're going to get heard. And if you've ever dealt with somebody who's only been screamed at their whole life, sometimes, that's the only way they hear you, is if you scream at them. So sometimes people believe that's the only way they're heard. But I believe in a lot of this mess, there's a lot of opportunists that are coming in, just trying to make opportunities for them to do bad things. And I wish the good people that were in this process, that were trying to get the message out, understood the amount of opportunists that are in the middle of it, trying to make it into something that it's not. I'm sorry that George Floyd went through what he went through. And I'm sorry that no one acted and did anything to stop it. But that's one man. There's over 800,000 law enforcement officers in this country. To judge all of us for the uniform we wear is no different than judging everyone for the color of their skin. Most of us are there because we want to help people. Most of us are there for the right reasons, doing the right thing to the best of our ability. Are we all perfect? Absolutely not. But most of us want nothing more than to make sure everybody goes home safe at the end of the day, including the people that we serve. So, anyway, I hope I said something helpful today. I feel like I really had a hard time with what to say and how to say today. But just need to say a quick prayer, and then I'll let you guys go for the night. Father God, thank you so much for everybody who's listening. I know in all of this that you are working somehow. Sometimes things need to get dark before something really good comes out of the darkness. Father God, I pray for George Floyd's family, and I pray that they find peace in all of this madness. I can't believe for a minute that this is honoring their loved one's life, Father God. So I pray that they find peace. And I pray that the people who deserve justice are brought to justice. And Father God, I pray for you to come across our country and bring that peace that passes all understanding, and bring your love and shine your light as bright as you possibly can. We love you so much, and we trust you in all of this. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for being with me today, and I hope you have a great week. Please stay safe. Right now, I feel like it's another reason to just stay home for a little while. But stay safe, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.